In this video, we are going to be covering blueprints. Let's go ahead and get started. Blueprints are an in-engine visual scripting, programming, coding language for Unreal Engine 4 to allow you to do stuff. Now, I refer to it as stuff because blueprints allow you to do a lot of things. For example, it's controlling our character. It's controlling how we're moving with our character, and it's even driving things such as an animation system, which we'll cover separately. It can do things such as allow you to easily reuse props. Maybe you have a light that you want to reuse that's got some special settings. You could easily reuse it with a blueprint. Or you could do things such as actually controlling artificial intelligence, and the entire game can be done completely in blueprints. Blueprints is coding. Let me go and open up a blueprint. Let's go to our player, and let's go to the third person character. This entire screen is a blueprint. These sections here, what we're seeing in here, all of our components, our settings, this entire thing is considered a blueprint. And this blueprint controls what our character looks like, what our camera does and behaves like, and how we can move our character using the blueprint nodes system. Now, how can we make a blueprint? They're pretty simple. If we go into our content, for example, and we were to right click and choose blueprint, we would get an option of who's the parent of our blueprint. Basically, what do we want to have our basic blueprint to have features of? You'll have your default ones here, and then you have a whole bunch of other settings down here. We're not going to create one right now. We're going to create one in a bit. But for now, that's basically how you'd create one. We're going to go ahead and go over the overview of the blueprint for our third-person character. So this blueprint has a few different sections. This is our main viewport, just like on here. And this is going to control what we're doing, what we're working with. The viewport itself is what it looks like. What is our blueprint going to look like? Is there going to be any physical portion to our blueprint? Blueprints can be code only. They could exist in your scene and maybe control the lighting, but not actually have anything in it. It just simply talks to your lights. Or blueprints could be something more complicated, like in here, where we have our character. We have a model, which is using a mesh. We have a camera boom, which is basically like a selfie stick for anyone who's new, or a literal camera boom if you're in the entertainment industry. And then a camera attached to the boom itself. We have an arrow component. We've seen that before. It's just an arrow that says, hey, this direction is forward. And then we have a capsule component, which is our collision. It's going to control the physicalness of our character. We have a few other things like character movement, which is basically a ton of code. That Epic was like, you know what? We're going to make it super simple on you to be able to move your character. All you have to do is have this, do a few things, and your character can move. None of the fancy math needs to be done. You just tell us what you want to do. We'll take care of it. Oh, we'll also let you set a couple hundred options, such as how fast they can move, if they can fly, if they can duck, if they can run. We'll be nice to you. You have stuff like third-person character, which controls things like where you can see from and jumping times. There's a ton of options here. This is a more complicated blueprint. We're going to create a simple, generic blueprint. Let's go ahead and actually do that now. When I mentioned blueprints are useful for reusing things, you don't necessarily have to use them for code and stuff like that. We're going to take our generic lights in this scene. So, like for example, you see lights, but you don't know where they're coming from. And we're going to make a prop for like a wall light, and then put a light bulb in it, and then we're going to make it adjustable and look and reusable. Let's get started. Let's go into our content and create a new folder. We'll call this one Blueprints. Now under blueprints, I'm going to make a new folder and call this one props. And that's where we're going to hold all of our props that we make that are blueprints. Right click, blueprint class, and now we're going to choose our parent class. The parent class is the basic template of our blueprint. It is the overarching base for what we're going to work on. An example that was given is Hugh Jackman. Now you have Hugh Jackman, who is an actor. He is going to be our base. Now Hugh Jackman has played other roles. For example, he's played a singer in, I believe, Les Miserables. He's played Wolverine in the X-Men movies. The character Wolverine would be a child of the parent, which is Hugh Jackman. So Hugh Jackman gives you things like acting ability, and he gives you his accent and things like that, his physicalness. Now Wolverine, being the child, gives you the things specific to Wolverine. You get the sideburns, you get the costume, and you get the claws. If we wanted to talk to Wolverine, we would need to talk to Wolverine. We can't go, hey, Hugh Jackman, let me see your claws. Hugh Jackman is the parent. He doesn't know about the claws, the things that are specific. But if, for example, we were to talk to Wolverine and say, hey, what do you look like? Well, we would know because we know what Hugh Jackman looks like, because Hugh Jackman is the parent. So that was a roundabout way of saying our parent class is going to give us our basic. It's going to be our basic. We have a few defaults here. These first three are the ones you're going to use most of your time. You have an actor. It is just your basic, simple thing that is put in your level that does whatever you want. Nothing special comes with it. You have your pawn. Your pawn is intended for use for things that will have things done to it. Maybe, for example, your player, this is a spaceship, and you want your player to possess the spaceship and move them around. You could use a pawn. Then you have your character. It adds on even more. It gives you the ability to really simply move around the scene and look and control and duck and run. Our third person character, if we go back to here and pull it up, and we look up here, you'll see the parent class is character. By being a character, we got the character movement, we got our capsule component, we got our mesh, which controls what we look like, we got the arrow component, we got all these nifty things. So let's go back to our props folder, and let's create a new blueprint, and we're going to do actor. We're going to name this BP_light, and this is going to be our blueprint that's going to hold our light. We don't want anything special to be done with it, so it's going to be just an actor. We're just going to slap it in our scene. This is what a blank blueprint looks like. It looks just like the character one, except a lot less stuff. By default, our actor blueprint is going to come with just a scene root. The scene root is where, what, how. It's our transform to this item, our location, our scale, and our rotation to this item in the world. It is basically our pivot point or origin or the base of this blueprint. We add things onto it in order for us to do stuff. So since this one's going to be basic, we're going to have a light, and we're going to have a static mesh that looks like a light, and we're going to combine them. We'll do add component, static mesh, and this is going to add a static mesh as a child. Now the static mesh has no look because we've assigned nothing to it. We need to find a light. Let's see if we can use our content browser to help us. We'll go back to content, filters, and then we'll go static mesh. And now you'll notice if we check static mesh is highlighted, blue to indicate static mesh, and we're only going to look at static meshes. And we can go ahead and we can look through here. And we're actually going to find what I want, which is our wall lamp. We can click on it. We can go back to our static mesh, and remember our different ways. We can either click here to use selected asset, or we could use our drop down list and find it. Now that we have our selected asset, we have a little light. It's a little wall light. It goes on the wall, and it's meant to look like you're lighting things up. It doesn't produce any light. It's just a mesh. It just does stuff. If we were to go back to here, go back to our profs, uncheck stack mesh, and drag our blueprint light in, we're going to find our light that we can now position in our scene anywhere we want. I'm going to go ahead and put this on the wall. So let's drag this over and put it on the wall without going through, like that. There we go. And we'll put it somewhere like this. And there's our light on the wall. Now we do have this giant white sphere. This is something that comes by default when you create your blueprint, and it's our default scene root. The default scene root is, like I said, it's our root. It's how we know where things are. And the default one has this annoying white sphere. We can easily fix that. If we go and we add component, we go down to scene, and then we rename this. I'm going to name it root because it's the root. We now have two scene components. We have our default one, which is our root, and then we have our root scene component. We have our other scene component I named root. We can just drag and drop, and now we have a new root that I created with a stack mesh under it, and you'll notice we don't have that annoying sphere. We go back in here, no annoying sphere. So you'll see me do this a couple times. I always replace the default scene root with my own just to get rid of that sphere. Let's add our light. We'll add component. Hopefully you can figure out what we're doing here. Finding light, and we're going to do a point light. And there we go. There's our point light. Now if we were to save this and compile and look, we now have a light. Let's get rid of the other lights in our scene. And let's go ahead and just work with this one. Now we're going to notice a couple things. This light is physically underneath right here. It's at the origin point. Whereas if we wanted to, we want it more up here. So let's go ahead and click on our light and move it up and move it over. And now we have our light here. And we have it looking like it's kind of illuminating from this point, and you can see the radius and things like that. We can go back to here, and we can actually see what it looks like now. Whoops. Click on our light, F to focus, and hold down Alt to rotate around it. And there we go. We have a light with a little bit of a look, and you have a bunch of stuff happening. One thing that we're going to run into an issue with here is this light is going to be very bright, and we don't exactly have a transparent material for it to look through. And I mean, we're going to get kind of a crummy look. We're not going to get exactly what we're hoping for. We can adjust that. Keep in mind, it's just meant to simulate. This is meant to simulate a light. And we kind of want an effect. We want it to look like it's lighting. What I'm going to do is go to this mesh right here. Go up to its mesh part. Where is it at? Oh, stack mesh, you're not cooperating. Oh, I hate when this happens. You can always, oops, come on. There we go. So, if you go up to the top and type in shadow, I have the option cast shadow. I want to shut this off. And compile and save, and now you'll notice I don't have this annoying shadow that was under there. That was the first thing. I just want this to look like it is illuminating. So if we were to actually run this, we'd see that right there. We'd see it looks like it's kind of illuminating. It's a bit bright. Let's go and adjust that. Now if you have multiple monitors, any of these tabs can be dragged off and dropped on another monitor. If you don't, you can always just carefully resize it. So you can actually have two different things running at once like this. And now we can adjust a few things. We'll go to our light. We will remove our search and we'll adjust this. Let's go ahead and, I don't know, let's see. What do we want? Let's make our attenuation radius. Let's go with like 600. And our intensity. It seems a bit intense, doesn't it? Let's go with 1,000 for the intensity. What do we think? Something like that, maybe? Okay. We have a few other options we can adjust in here. Shadow bias is what's causing some of these little effects with our lines right here. By default, because of where we have our light in here, see if we move it away farther, we're going to have less of an issue. That actually might, I wonder if that's smarter. I wonder if we move it like that, we can kind of get the effect we're looking for with less of an issue. Well, let's see, what's this look like in here? I mean, keep in mind, we're meant to simulate. It's a game. You're faking, honestly, a lot of the stuff. You're not going to get realistic effects by doing things certain ways. So, you know what? I don't know, that kind of looks kind of cool, right? The light looks like it's kind of shining out from there. And we actually can see the light itself. Okay, we're going to go ahead and go with that. Let me pull this back up. Let me move this back over. Let's look at this. That's not bad. We get kind of a little bit of a shadow effect on it. This looks kind of like it's glowing. It's not too blown out. Let's maybe move it out one more and go with play. That's not bad. I don't think that looks too horrible, to be honest. You're kind of getting the effect that we're looking for. Now, if you notice down in there, it looks like the light bulb is glowing. If we were to go into our static mesh itself and go into the material, you'll notice this monstrosity. Part of it is emissive. Emissive is basically, it's going to, this color right here, which represents our light bulb, is going to emit light and look like it's glowing. So that's another way of using materials to get a really cool little effect. So let's go with that. Now, I don't like the fact that it is, let's see. This is one of the issues we're going to run into. Actually, see, you're going to run into kind of an issue with our shadows because of the way we did that. So we're just playing with this. I'm going to make an artistic choice. I'm going to go into our light, and I'm going to type in cast shadows and shut that off. And there we go. Now we no longer have shadows being cast by the light. Again, this is for artistic purposes. We have our light. Now here's the good part. We've set this up. This is exactly what we want. We can easily just take and drop more lights into our scene, just like that. And it's going to try to auto fit the lights on our surfaces. Now, because our surfaces, when we have it looking here, we have our origin point with our Y and our X here, it's going to try and bump that edge onto the surface. Over here, technically it did, but it applied it in the opposite direction because that origin point has the X facing forward, which is that way. So again, Alt, drag over, boom, there we go. We'll go ahead and hit play, and we'll look, and we have something that's not horrible. I mean, it's not the best thing, obviously. My artistic skills leave a bit to be desired, but you know, we could go with something like that. And you know, maybe move it over a little bit, just a little bit of look. We'll do something like that. And there we go. You know, that's not bad. And we'll go with this. Our lighting in here, we can still adjust as needed. Or, you know what, I'm going to just simply keep the lighting in here like it is now. I kind of like it. We're just meant to introduce what a basic blueprint is and some adjustable settings. Now, advantages of blueprints. As you saw, we can just drag and drop and easily reproduce. Any changes you make inside of your blueprint, let's go ahead and do this. Okay, there's two things. Individually placed blueprints in our world will hold their unique values. So, for example, these ones have our different rotational and location values. These ones have location. This one has unique rotation because I had to rotate. But they also contain the unique values of their children. So in this case, I have the size of the mesh, and I have the color of the lights, and the sizes and the intensities. I can go in here, and let's say I wanted this light to be brighter. Just this light. I could go into this instance right here, go into its light, up its intensity, like that, and up its attenuation radius. Actually, let's decrease it, just so it's more visible, like that. And we now have an individual blueprint with a different setting than everything else. And if we go in and we look at it, you'll notice that light has different settings. This arrow indicates reset to default, the default being whatever I've set up inside of here, which are these settings. Let's go ahead and reset this. Now, one thing that's nice, again, like I said, because they are all the same thing, if I do change any defaults, like let's say, for example, I want all these lights to be a different color, I can affect them all at once because they are all using the same basic template, which is what a blueprint is. So I'm going to give me that, what did we have? We had something like maybe that. There we go. And there we go. Now I have that softer yellow base color that I wanted. And of course I can go in and individually adjust things as needed and move them around. So your blueprint is your base template. Anytime you create something in here, it's creating a unique individual instance of it, as you can see here. But each individual instance also contains its own parameters and settings, so you could go back in and adjust them as well inside the individual settings. So in this case, I have a blue one that's much brighter. And I'm not going to affect anything else. If I go back into my blueprint and adjust its settings, as long as they're different than what their settings in here, like for example, if I was to change the attenuation radius in my blueprint, let's go with the attenuation radius of, let's go like 2200. And you look in here, you'll notice my attenuation radius is now 2200. My intensity is 25,000, even though my default is 1,000. My color's beige, even though my color's blue. Those have been modified for this individual instance, so it's going to save those changes. These changes in here, for my default, are going to override. So, sum it up. You have your blueprint, you drop it in, boom, it makes a copy. Any changes you make to your copy individually are saved to your copy individually. Anytime you update the master, it updates any of the original settings on the clones, on the copies, and then the copies' individual settings override those individual changes. This should wrap up the basics of a blueprint. It's a reusable, scriptable object. We're going to cover the animation system next, and then go into creating a more interactive blueprint.